Hi Year 10, this is a flipped lesson in which I'm comparing an excerpt from Namley's The Boat and Ando's The Happiest Refugee from Chapter 2. So the first page of The Boat, we get we start with the moment of change where the storm comes. And of course, we've got the subject being a boat, not a ship, a boat. Boats and storms obviously don't mix. So we get this instant problematic situation for the subject, which is the boat. And we get a description or some imagery of the actual storm, where the boat, the rotten with, sounds like a chorus of low moans. So you've got a simile describing that, showing how the boat's not suited to this kind of climate. And imagery such as the wall of black-green water, and and the sky being dark and inky and shifting. That imagery, the visual imagery there, shows how terrible and frightening and ominous this particular storm is, how life-threatening to be facing a wall of black-green water where there's no relief even from the sky. The second paragraph's followed with a series of quite aggressive, violent verbs: collided, slammed, slipped, banged, jammed, groaning, writhing, impelling, heaving, rocking. All those verbs serve to show what a dangerous situation that this is in, that the main character is in. And people are struggling to survive. People are not described as being people. Apart from May, they're more like bodies, just bits of bodies, thighs and ribs and arms and heads. So people actually lose some of their humanity as they're being tossed about by the storm. First paragraph on the second page of 265, you've got the people on this boat being confronted with the things that they normally hide, or the abject, that's ABJECT. So things like urine and vomit. People are exposed to that and exposed to each other's and can't hide their own. And that's what happens when you're in a death-like situation, is that the things that you'd normally hide or try not to try not to reveal or keep private, are actually, brought out in the open because you cannot control your reflexes and so forth. Just skipping down to that second last paragraph of that page, again we got these really aggressive verbs of, when the storm arrives. So drained, screamed, panicked, clawing, slapping, banging, reeling, forcing. So again, showing how dangerous this situation is, evokes a sense of terror, as we've got all these verbs that show how aggressive this particular storm is. Also, what's interesting is the first line of this particular of this story. It shows the storm came on quickly, and then when it's followed by all those verbs describing what's happening to all the people on the boat, you think, oh gosh, what a terrible storm. And then halfway down the second page, the storm finally arrives, and you think, oh, I thought it did actually happen. So it is quite a great technique. It's a way to evoke a sense of terror in the reader and sympathy for the people on the boat, because you can imagine how, that they're all vomiting, they're being tossed about, people are peeing, can't control their bladders, trying to look for each other on the boat to see that everyone's safe, and yet now that the storm's arrived, we get on the last line of that particular paragraph, they're really facing possibly the moment before death. Just moving on to the next excerpt. So from Ando's autobiography, The Happiest Refugee, again we've got another situation with the boat. So you've got imagery used as well to show, basically it's not a comfortable situation that they're in. The water is flat and blue. The heat of the tropical afternoon sun clung to our skin and shoulders, so personification there, showing it's a really uncomfortable place that they're in. People, it's not a jolly ride or anything like that. People are only doing it out of desperation. And we get a sense of that desperation reinforced in the second paragraph of that particular section, where it says, describes the boat as being so small that we're jammed into every crevice. So you can imagine, you can almost visualize people being like sardines, body against body, trying to fit into the boat. And also, again, you've got this imagery of the suffocating stench of old fish, showing that these people are really, their lives are on the line here, and this is their last resort. Just like you can imagine in the previous excerpt, these people are putting themselves in, in a situation where they could, die at sea, and lose everything that they're trying to attain, but they're only doing it out of desperation. It's the absolute last resort. There's also an interesting metaphor of the boat as being a living, seething mass of human desperation floating in the Eastern Sea, which is why I interpret both sections as showing us that these people who do come on boats are only doing it out of absolute desperation. This is their last resort. And I think both short stories serve to point that out to, I guess, upper middle class people like ourselves who haven't had to go through that kind of torment. Also, on this, just skipping to the last paragraph on the second part of that page, you've got a description of people at the end of the day, after they've had some food and they've sort of suffered through the heat of the tropical sun. They're slumping in whatever space they can find and try to sleep. So imagery of people just, they've got very little hope, very little sense of that, that tomorrow will be any different, that they will seek any reprieve, find any reprieve from the suffering that they're going through. And they're just slumping. They kind of lack personality, lack any hope, and also like the verb of Koa screaming through the night, again shows that it's just a really horrible situation for them to be in. So in comparing the two excerpts, in the short story and the autobiography. One, of course, being fictional, but based on something that happens in real life. You get it through the perspective of a young girl. This particular excerpt is from the perspective of Ando, but he wouldn't have remembered it, so he's basing it on descriptions that he's received from other people. But both of them are quite personal. One, you get that, the first one, however, you get that more imminent sense of death, and the ominous, tone of the storm coming over and wrecking the boat and tossing it from side to side and tossing the people in it like the little rag dolls. Whereas here it's a bit quieter, it's a lot calmer, but it's no less dangerous and no less terrible for the people on board to cope with. Anyway, so that's my analysis. I hope you enjoy doing your own analyses of your excerpts. Thanks. Bye.